Welcome, everyone, to EncycloPod. I am Sean DeRager, your host. I'm the managing editor of EncycloPocalypse Publications. For those of you who haven't heard of EncycloPocalypse, or maybe you've come on for Vincenzo or Brian Barry or whatever, we're a publisher started a few years back by Mark Allen Miller. Going to be having Mark Allen Miller on the show soon. Hopefully, we're working that out. But we're a publisher that's dedicated to digitizing, reproducing classic genre novels and novelizations, mostly in horror, but all those like before the digital age, and as well as we've jumped into independent novels and new novelizations. So we're here to talk about independent novels and new novelizations today. Today's guest is Joshua Millican, and I'm very excited to have him on. He was one of the first authors that I had approached when I kind of came on board and, to publish, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And I'm going to fade this music out, and we're going to bring Josh in right now. Let's see if I can do this correctly here. Josh, what's up? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. Here we go. There we go.
How's it going, man?
It's good. Every time that I start this, I'm like, it's going to be a smooth intro. It's going to be awesome. And life always likes throwing you a curveball, but
relatively smooth.
Smoother. It's the smoothest yet. I'll take that win. Josh, so glad we're finally able to do this. I've been wanting to chat with you in some format like this, and I'm glad that I got the idea to start this up, and it really, I've been seeing you on other podcasts, and I'm like, I want to sit down and talk to Josh.
Yeah.
Neon lighted office there.
Well, you and I have a real relationship outside of the business side of publishing, and we have so many great conversations about the genre and about the business just in our social interactions. So it's great to kind of get some of these conversations out there, and we're so relaxed talking to each other. It'll be funny to see where this goes, because truthfully, I'm up for anything, man. This could end up going anywhere.
Yeah, let's do this. It's funny because I knew you before online through a little horror community back when Twitter was cool. We're old now. That's why. No, it's because it's being taken over by a psychomaniac.
Yeah.
But we knew each other kind of in passing through our kind of horror friends, and I was trying to start a podcast. You were writing. You got the gig doing Editor-In-Chief, being the Editor-In-Chief over at DreadCentral, and and you kind of threw it out there, after a few years of us kind of knowing each other, I guess I should say, that you had this novel that you were kind of shopping around, and you wrote it, didn't know what to do with it, and I saw your post, and I was like, and I just started kind of working with Mark more, because when I started, and Mark and I will talk about this when I have Mark on, but I was just doing audiobooks for Mark. I'd only done one, and I was kind of talking with him, and he knew of me through the Screamcast that I did, and so we had some similar, and so I saw you post this, and I was like, well, what the hell? Let's see what Josh has. And I had no idea. You had, so you sent it to me, and I read it, and it was such a breath of fresh air. So that book was deeper than hell, and it was such a breath of fresh air. I'll get it right one of these days.
Yeah.
That. I had such a good time reading it, and it was so wild and different than anything that I'd read up to that point in the indie, horror genre and things like that. And I was like, well, the all the tie-ins to, Clive Barker's universe and things like that, so many homages and stuff. It was just really fun as a horror fan. So we've known each other since then, and you've put out a few more books since then. They're all sitting behind me.
Sean, I really think that you should give yourself a little more credit. You really are like my guardian angel of publishing. When a person, an artist, puts something out on Twitter or Facebook saying, hey, I'm new at this, and I've got this thing, and I'm trying to break in. It's almost like screaming into the void. It's like screaming off of a cliff. And the fact that you heard me and I sent it to you, and it actually turned into a fruitful contract. I think that is every budding author's fantasy. And it actually happened with me. So it's like, you are my guardian angel. And, you really gave my career a jump start. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I think everyone should know exactly how cool you are because of exactly how rare it was for me. And you're just the epitome of everything that's good about independent publishing and independent publishers.
Thanks, man. I will take it. It's very hard for me to take compliments, but I will definitely take that. I mean,
Take it.
well, there's mutual respect, and I always try to, I always try to approach things in mutual respect. So it just really was one of those things that was serendipitous. It really did work out. And,
Absolutely.
And if the book wasn't good, I wouldn't have, if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have reached out,
Right.
so that's just kind of how all these things work. But,
Absolutely.
you have such history, in horror, in journalism, and that's kind of how I originally got to know you. I wanted to ask you first, starting off, with people just getting to know you, or have seen your name and haven't been on any of your books yet. What was it about horror that really initially got its hooks into you? Because you're not just like a casual horror fan. You're not just you're not even like an enthusiastic horror fan. Like, you live and breathe horror, in
Obsessed.
any,
Yes. Obsessed is
yeah,
the word.
and we all kind of had those friends, I think, in high school. I did, and they were the ones who brought me in. And probably later on in high school, I kind of had some people, but and you're like, that is you. Like, you're the guy who's like, oh, you haven't seen this? Let's watch it, or I'll recommend it.
Yeah.
What was it? What was the initial spark that you were like, oh, this is my jam?
There were two kind of phases of my life where horror really made that impression. I am kind of the same generation as you are, Sean, more or less, and The Fly, Cronenberg's The Fly, and Aliens came out the same summer, and I don't know how young Josh got into the movie theater for both of those R-rated movies, but he was there. I guess it was easier to do back then. And wow, those movies, I just loved them. And it started more or less a lifelong love of horror. Then, you got to fast forward to the early aughts. And when Netflix arrived, and when it first started, first of all, it was a DVD service. And I was big on them when it was just DVDs, and I was seeing all these movies I hadn't heard of, since the blockbusters all closed. And then they started having their streaming online service. And back when Netflix first started doing that, they were the only ones doing that. And their vault was huge. They had so many horror movies in one place. It was really kind of a golden age, and it's not as good anymore on any single streaming service. A lot of the films that I saw on Netflix in the early aughts are now all scattered to the wind, and some of them aren't even available in any form, even streaming in America anymore. That's kind of when horror just really bit me, and I just got really excited about horror of the 21st century. I liked staying really up to date on horror. I like how horror is a reflection of society's fears and anxieties. And I loved watching it, experiencing it, and I loved writing about it. Started blogging, wanted to work on bigger sites, got lucky, ended up at DreadCentral.
Nice. I mean, you have a specific kind of, what you write about, what interests you. You mentioned Cronenberg, Clive Barker, things like that. What is it about those specifically that kind of speak to you? Because I'm a little bit different. While I like Clive Barker, love Hellraiser, Lord of Illusions, absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cronenberg, like The Fly, anything like that Cronenberg has touched, I like it, but those aren't high on the rewatch list. I like
Sure.
more kind of fun, campy monster, stuff. What is it about those specifically? I mean, because Deeper Than Hell is very much a love letter to Clive Barker and his work.
Yeah,
Uh, and it moves into Septum, the follow up.
absolutely.
What is it about that horror that really kind of speaks to you?
Well, I think Clive Barker and David Cronenberg are both masters of body horror, but they kind of sit at different ends of the spectrum. You've got Clive Barker sitting way off in fantasy land on one end of the body horror spectrum, and you've got David Cronenberg on the medical scientific end of body horror, and the entire spectrum is creepy. Um, and you're right that the films that these men release aren't necessarily fun. They're an experience, but they aren't necessarily fun. At the end of them, you feel like you've been through something big, though. They're very affective, as opposed to effective. They are affective, and that definitely goes into Deeper Than Hell. I can say there are a lot of horror books out there that are more fun to read than Deeper Than Hell. Deeper Than Hell is a bit of an endurance contest, because as the title suggests, I'm trying to convey something that's so bad it's beyond comprehension. And, on the way to exploring this metaphysical idea of what's worse than the worst, you kind of have to go through a laundry list of the main human anxieties of the 21st century. But yeah, I guess when I watch a film, I loved New French Extremity. That kind of split, that moment in time that lasted about 5 years from in the aughts, started around 2023, and by 2028 I think it was all over in terms of its relevance, in terms of its fire. And those films were unapologetically nihilistic. And I started realizing, a lot of times when you have a happy ending in an American horror movie, it rings hollow. But when you go the other direction and you say, hey, man, there's no happy ending here. This is about what it would really be like if you endured this. The emotional intensity just rings so much higher, and maybe a psychologist would say there's something wrong with me, that I need these more intense things to get an emotional response. But, I think it's not just about gory horror. It can be about sad horror. I think sad horror gets a bad rap. People are like, oh, I loved The Mist up until that ending. It's like you feel bad if you like a movie that's really sad. But I think sad horror is phenomenal, and it really sticks with you. You can leave a horror movie feeling it in the pit of your stomach, and sometimes you leave feeling it deep in your heart. So, long answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's movies. No, I mean, there's movies like like Hereditary, right? Like that. That's such a powerful film.
Yes.
In many ways, and it's such a gut punch, and that was the same sort of thing, where people like certain aspects of it, but the gut punch part, doesn't stick with a lot of people. And I like those, but I own Hereditary. I want to watch it again, but there's times where I'm like, maybe I'll watch it again tonight, and then I'm like, maybe not.
Maybe I'm the same way, man. You have to be prepared to go into it, and you know what? Even friends of mine who like good horror movies, I will be careful about recommending a film like Hereditary, because I know that it is. Talk about an affective movie. I actually saw it for the first time at South by Southwest. The only other time it had even screened before that was at Sundance. All we knew that was it was some great horror movie. People were saying it was really scary, but I had no idea what kind of horror, what it was. When that scene happened, theater was crowded, and intensely watching this. You've got audience of all movie cinephiles who are deeply connecting to
Right.
what's on the screen. And when that scene happened, there was a woman next to me. I don't know her name, but she went like this. Like, I seriously like watched her like endure a mental trauma. She brought her knees up to her
Yeah.
chest. That is like
Yeah.
a crazy fear response, you know? And it was just nuts, and it took the wind out of me. Yeah. So, you know, I won't recommend it to someone unless unless they've probably already seen it, you know? That's a
I mean,
crazy film.
that's one of the best things that I like about horror is just how wide a breadth that it has. There is something for everyone. I mean, my wife does not like horror at all, and there are times where I can find something that I know she will like or at least will tolerate. Something like The Menu, where not well, that's not all horror, um, but it's saying something. Her and I both love like food cooking shows about fine dining and stuff like that. So I knew there was characters that she could relate to. She did not like it, but at least she gave it a try. So it's always this thing to try to figure something out for her. But I do love like how you can find something. There's gateway horror. Five Nights at
There
Freddy's is a
is.
great gateway horror film. Stuff that I knew that when my kids were younger that I can show them. Monster Squad. Even some other movies from the 80s that aren't necessarily horror have these elements. Like Goonies has certain
Hell yeah.
elements in it, that I can show them. But then you have
Well,
stuff on the more serious side, like Clive Barker's work, like Hereditary, like we talked about. I mean, even like Midsummer, the same director as Hereditary, that is very just fantastic, but not for everybody either.
yeah.
So that's why horror is so great, as opposed to any other genre.
Horror is so big that saying you don't like horror is like saying you don't like food. You can
Bacon.
find, you can find food that you like even if you don't like pizza.
Right.
You know, you
Right.
you can find the horror that you like. Hocus Pocus can be considered a horror movie. There are horror movies that are just completely psychological, where no blood is spilled. There's suspense. There's cosmic. There's Godzilla is a horror movie. So
Yeah.
saying you don't like horror just means that you're being closed minded about what horror is, and you say more than any other genre. But horror is able to encapsulate all the other genres. You can have action horror, horror comedy, you can have horror thriller, horror mystery, horror sci-fi. It's so fluid that it goes everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that's as versatile as horror, in my opinion, is cannabis, because there's a cannabis for everyone, just like there's a horror movie for everyone. Am I
There
right?
is, and you can't say that. You can't say that about alcohol. I feel like here we go. Now it's just becoming the cannabis cast, but
Mm-hmm.
alcohol has specific things. That people like. People like wine or beer or liquor. Like as people in the great state of California, and we're among. I mean, more and more states are jumping on board, but. And we weren't even the first, which was very always surprising.
Well, it's interesting.
But
The reason we weren't the first is because a lot of the people who voted against legalization in California the first two times were in the industry, and they were afraid that corporatization was going to take it away from the independent farmer, which it largely has. The small boutique grower, living a decent life, making 70 to 100 grand a year growing out of his backyard or closet. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. But I mean, that's totally unfortunate, and something that I'm hoping. Well, I don't like making it legally federally I'm hoping could open up more of those doors, because there's so many loopholes with having a cannabis business that it just, the banking, all that kind of stuff. But you're right, it did become corporate, and because I've used it mainly for medical reasons, and so when I talk to people about it, there is hard. You can't find the information you need to find anymore. It's hard to find medical information if you had a dispensary. So there's certain people that will know, but when it was strictly medical, you can go and really kind of hone in on some things. And cannabis is so versatile, like horror, that you can literally find the few things that will work for you and know which
Absolutely.
ones you should avoid.
Well, the most genius
So
thing I've seen recently, there's a dispensary here in Los Angeles in Hollywood, and they did a line of vape oils. And what they did is they named the strains after the effect they produce. So there was sleep, there was meditate, there was focus, there was energy. So it was a brilliant idea. There was one for being creative. And it's like, what a brilliant way to categorize something as big as cannabis. You know what? If we're not careful, we're just going to end up talking about cannabis for the entire time. All right,
because Mr. ADHD here, like I hyper focused on cannabis when it became legalized, and I have all this information rattling around in my head that's just there. But I did bringing the conversation back. I did want to know, what what was it that kind of sparked the interest to sit and write a novel? Because you're this horror journalist, you're covering new releases, you're going set visits, things like that. Your main writing is in the journalistic sense. What was it about that kind of sparked the interest to even sit down and write a novel? Because it's such a different type of writing.
Right. Well, you're right that most people who know me and the way I got like my small amount of, internet fame, or, the reason I'm known in the community is through my work at DreadCentral. So it seems like a shift that, I would go from being a journalist for over a decade into writing fiction. But a lot of people don't know that I actually have a degree in creative writing. Creative writing was actually my first real experience in writing beyond essay writing in high school and college. So I love writing. I've always written in some capacity, whether it's short stories or, I would begin novels and not finish them, or I would write poems or song lyrics. But yeah, I was very focused on journalism, and I got the same satisfaction from that I always got in writing creatively. Now, how did my first novel come into being is interesting too, because, I might not have done it at all, except for there was this online magazine. I think it was Dirge.com, and they were doing this contest where they wanted to get authors to write serials for them, where they would write one chapter a month for a year. And then at the end of the year, they would potentially release it as a novel. And I thought, that's a great idea. So who's barking over there?
Oh, these dogs! I swear, I was like, you guys can only be in here if you're good, and they're not.
Long story short,
I could get to Mike the Mutant time.
Long story short, I was inspired to write a first chapter to enter this contest at Dirge.com. I wasn't selected to write a serial for them, but I had my first chapter. I had an outline of the whole thing. I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to write it anyway. But then, not long after that is when I got promoted to first managing editor and then editor-in-chief at DreadCentral. And so for a long, long time, all of my own personal creative endeavors were just put to the side in the name of promoting the legacy that was DreadCentral, something that I took very seriously during my time there.
Right. And you worked tirelessly there. I couldn't even imagine. I've known other editor-in-chiefs and other people who work in like other sites, like not horror, but one of uh, my wife's cousin's wife, so cousin-in-law, I guess, is what was for a paper for the LA Times or something like that, was the entertainment editor.
Mhm.
And whenever there was something going on, it didn't matter what holiday it was, it didn't matter what's going on. She always had her laptop. I'm sure she still does. She's in San Francisco now. Always has her laptop. It's Thanksgiving, and but something else is going on that she's covering, or kind of gathering everything together. It's a tireless job.
Yeah,
And
you nailed it. You nailed it right there. There are no weekends. There are no holidays. There might be a fire to put out. A fact that
yeah,
needs to be checked or changed. There may be something on the marketing side that needs to be addressed immediately. Yeah, there would be times I'd have to end a dinner to jump into this. Around the time I wrapped up my career at DreadCentral, was when my son was born. And, from that point on, that kind of career for me was just impractical.
yeah, absolutely. You have one, and he's little and adorable. I have three, and yeah, I mean, especially the first, your life does change, and no matter what
Yeah.
you're doing, you kind of start to reassess everything. And I know, my wife and I have had to reassess, careers and things like that with each kid that was born.
Right.
And, and then we had, COVID's going on as well. Right? Was COVID still going on
Yeah.
when your little guy was
COVID
born?
happened about 6 months after I had taken the position of editor-in-chief. So, most of
Okay.
my tenure at DreadCentral was during COVID, was, trying to steer the
Okay, that's
ship
right.
through these unprecedented times in these new uncharted territories.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so yeah, so I'm getting the timelines worked out in my head here. So, but yeah, that's it's admirable that and it's not like you're just like, well, I'm just going to take this other corporate job over here. It's like, like you know, I'm going to go into some unknowns career wise, and I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to become an author. And and then that's when our paths kind of crossed again in just a whole
Mhm.
different level. So so let's talk about Deeper Than Hell, and then we'll move into Septum in a bit, because I want to spend some time on Deeper Than Hell in a
Sure.
non-spoilery way.
We can
Spoilery way, of
spoil
course.
as much as
I
we
narrate books,
want.
can you tell?
It's been out for a year. Let's spoil as much as people want. I think that it just makes them more likely
Hey,
to read it at this point.
you you are the author, and but that said, though, I don't feel I have my own opinions about spoilers. I don't I don't I'm sensitive to other people, and but I don't think finding out the ending, or even a twist of a film or a story, can necessarily ruin your enjoyment. It may ruin an initial shock over something. Yes. Okay, I'll give it that. But I've been spoiled on films, watched them, and loved the hell out of them, and
Yeah.
it didn't take it away.
Right.
So, but
Well,
set
I'm
up
not
Deeper
talking
Than
about
Hell.
telling people like, and then it was all a dream, nothing like that.
Yeah.
As an
No,
author,
yeah. Okay,
I know
gotcha,
how to
gotcha.
share with while holding back just enough to keep it
Perfect.
interesting.
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. So tell me about Deeper Than Hell. Set it up for us, and then we'll kind of get into some more, specifics about the story and the inspirations to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I think I've always been kind of obsessed is too strong a word, but almost haunted by the idea of life underground. Just that phrase, life underground, is so evocative to me. Outer space to me seems cold and empty, and it's all about these trips that take thousands of light years, and people living in confined spaces. Don't get me wrong, good sci-fi is great. I love aliens, but I think of underground the same way as other authors might think of outer space. And what's so exciting about it to me is that it's right here. It's like anything could come burrowing up at any time and change our entire perception of reality. So anyway, setting it up deeper than hell.
Well, I was gonna say my mic was muted for a second. Of course, I forgot to unmute it. But the thing about space and where I see where you're going with this, space by itself is a vacuum. It's cold. There's nothing living in space. In order to find an alien or alien life, you have to land on a planet. Discover another spaceship that's out there floating with life in it. Things like that. So it's like space is kind of it's just the empty space to travel through to get to the monster or whatever.
Right.
I mean, all of us have dug in the backyard as kids. Yes. All of us have dug for worms, lifted up rocks, seen all the bugs. And, some of us have been to caves and things like that. It is absolutely a different story. And I mean, there's a reason why the movie The Descent is fucking, still one of the scariest movies in modern movies made.
Caves are scary as hell, but with Deeper Than Hell, I was more inspired by like infrastructure and urban exploring and the tunnels that exist beneath big cities like New York and Los Angeles and Las Vegas. And I should be clear because, Deeper Than Hell is a story about a guy who lives in the tunnels below Las Vegas. And for some reason, even though it's very clear in the book itself, people seem to sometimes think that I'm talking about sewers. My characters don't live in sewers. They live in these like abandoned tunnels, this area, these liminal spaces, almost like the back rooms, and the same sort of feeling like that. And I've just always been really inspired by urban explorers and the idea of deep underground military bases, cities underground, things like that. So,
It's just the standard, like, late night cannabis infused, like, trip through YouTube conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah. If you've read Deeper Than Hell, I love me a good conspiracy theory. I don't believe them. Like one of the characters in Deeper Than Hell, Drew, is he's very open-minded when it comes to conspiracy theories. I'm a little more on the analytical side, but I love a good conspiracy theory. It's always like, okay, do your best to convince me. And every once in a while,
right,
I'm still scratching my head. Let's
talk about the characters, the two main characters, Sonny, right, and Drew.
Yeah.
And they're the ones bringing us through. They're the C-3PO and R2-D2 of the story, kind of bringing us through.
Or the Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Yeah.
Tom Sawyer. I mean, I speak in George Lucas. You have like literary.
There are a lot of these duos making their quests together. Yeah, he's part of a long literary trope that spans genres.
What I love about them is their relationship is absolutely, you can buy it. Drew is such an entertaining character that, we talked earlier about, horror, Barker and Cronenberg, really being these dark, very serious, stories. But I think Drew, especially, his sense of humor, just the rants he goes on, he's so entertaining that you just can't stop, reading. You just can't. What's Drew going to say next? Like, what's going to happen next? He really does help bring the reader through, and I thought that was a really great, method of kind of bringing us through, because this is a journey. This is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. This is any road trip movie, that you've seen and love. But it's bringing you through this crazy underground world that you've created. It's absolutely fantastic. So it's not like, well, the plot unfolds as they are uncovering the plot or why they're there or where they're going to go. And I love those types of stories. What other stories, helped inspire that method rather than set here's the plot, here's the
Sure.
characters, this is what they got to overcome, here's the big bad. This is different.
Well, one of the things, another commonality between David Cronenberg and Clive Barker is their stories feature imperfect characters. We're so accustomed to the standard hero's journey with the main protagonist being someone that the average moviegoer can relate to. And it all just kind of elevates it into this other realm, which when you think about it is pretty unrealistic. The characters you find in the works of Barker and Cronenberg are flawed, deeply flawed. Look at Jeff Goldblum's character, Seth Brundle in The Fly, for example. He is smart and ambitious, but he's also completely driven by his work. And, I think that makes him and his relationships more interesting because of it. So Sonny and Drew are deeply flawed individuals, and they kind of wear that on their sleeves. That's part of who they are, obviously. They are their individual traumas. That plays into also, their interpretations of what's going on, because it's a first-person narrator. So this guy, Sonny, is the filter through which reality is presented. And that's the crux of it all. You got to decide, okay, who is this guy really? What condition is he in? And, what can I take away from this?
And Sonny's just not this he's not this casual drug user. I mean, Sonny is addicted to heroin. I'm going to grab the book because I don't have a note in front of me, but there's the cover for you people watching, for you people watching on YouTube here or Twitter or wherever the hell you're watching it. But so when I picked the book up and I opened up the Word file, the first thing that I read, this line hooked me in, and I think it's great. And this doesn't, I don't read a book like this often where the first line hooks me, but here's the first line, everybody. The thing most people don't understand about heroin is this: it's not about the quality of pleasure, it's about the absence of pain. So like that right there, I was like, okay, we're in for a treat here, because, you don't hear a character just being like, yeah, I use heroin. Yeah, why not? I was just hanging out the other night and shot up some heroin and, had some burgers and it was great.
Totally. Just trying to sum it all up in one quick, simple sentence.
But for him, it is this sort of affliction. It is something. It is the thing that makes everything go away. But it's also this burden that he has through it. And I thought, like I said, like the way you kind of weave stuff into Deeper Than Hell like this, it elevates it above just kind of a standard like horror fare. Like there's just so much more going on with it. And I remember when we had our signing event at Dark Delicacies, and a buddy of yours brought the book, and it was like marked up. I mean, that thing had been read. He had stuff highlighted, circled. Yeah. And I thought that was, I'd never seen anything like that outside of like, seeing the one crazy religious guy, the super religious guy at church, right? You know what I mean? This, like, I thought that was super interesting. I mean, can you elaborate on that? Like, because I thought that was great.
That was my buddy Milo.
He brought this.
Yeah, my buddy Milo Martin is also a wonderful writer in the Los Angeles poetry community, and we've known each other many years. He's a wonderful recipient of my literature. He's a fan of Joshua Millican, and he just loves talking about my work, as I love talking about him and sharing his work. Our mutual friend Preston Fussell said that we should release an annotated version of Deeper Than Hell, because it's got so many Easter eggs and homages and things like that. There are lines of dialogue that are pulled straight from horror movies. And, the conspiracy theories that we talked about. I was just on the Clive Barker podcast, and they're like, how many of those conspiracy theories are real, and how many did you make up? So like 90% of them are real. I'm riffing on actual theories, hollow earth theories, and, military infrastructure theories, and, feral human theories that have already been cultivated in film and literature. So, what were we talking about?
That's a fantastic segue there. We're talking about your buddy Milo and how he annotated that book. I just thought it was
Yeah,
great that
yeah.
he did that.
There's something else you were mentioning though about Sunny and heroin. I just want to make sure people know I was really careful about my portrayal of people who have addiction and people who live
right.
outside of societal norms, because so much
Right.
these characters can be two-dimensional stereotypes dressing up a horror story. If you're gonna be one of them, I think you owe it to really put yourself in their shoes, and I just tried to do that every step of the way, to show that these people aren't perfect, but these people are people, and they're people that you should care about.
And so that's a great transition into talking about Septum, because, so for Deeper Than Hell, you embodied Sunny as you wrote its first person. And then, I were talking about, you had the idea to do a follow-up, but not a direct sequel. But it was from the perspective of a woman named Sybil. And so here you were like, I'm going to embody, a woman in this story. And, that, and for me, like you and I joke about, man, we don't want to end up on the men writing women Reddit thread,
I mean, the fear is real.
because that is brutal.
Yeah.
And so you and I had to talk about that, and we even you were very specific for the beta readers. You wanted all women to read it, just to make, to see, because that, I thought that was great. Because
and that made me appreciate you and Mark and EncycloPocalypse as a publisher so much, because that was really a whole extra step that I wanted to make sure. It wasn't about like having a sensitivity reader, or it wasn't about like identifying potential triggers. It was just making sure that I hadn't grossly and horribly somehow misrepresented the female experience. And it was hard, and just like I really had to put myself in Drew's shoes and in Sunny's shoes to get into their heads. I really did put myself in Sybil's shoes. Who is this person, and how would she end up in this same dark underworld that Sunny and Drew passed through? And it's an interesting story though, because I had thought from almost the beginning about doing a follow-up to Deeper Than Hell, and I was going to do a follow-up on Thaddeus, the drug dealer who becomes the junk man, who's this like steampunk robot creature dude who trolls around the underworld. But people were so catalyzed by Sybil, and she's such a tiny character in Deeper Than Hell. But she's in chapter 3, which is the horror climax of it all. Like all the worst gore and pain and offensiveness all kind of goes down in chapter 3. It's a huge, abrupt, shocking shift. It's kind of like, if you get through that, you've made it through, physical wise. Hopefully your brain's still going to get squished around a lot. But anyway, some people were offended about this character named Sybil that I described as, having her mouth and eyes sewn shut, and having her nose be the only open orifice on her face, and the idea that she had gone through these deformative permanent surgeries in order to enhance her mono nostril, basically by removing her septum, the titular septum of Septum. So I had to be like, nice. Okay. And then I took it as kind of like a challenge. Well, okay, did I really just write this person to be a creature, to be, someone who comes out of the shadows once for a jump scare? Or was this a real person? So I was like, what? This is a real person. This is a real person. Her journey was very different than Sunny's. Whereas Sunny falls down holes and gets dragged kicking and screaming, and then runs away from monsters into deeper and deeper catacombs. Sybil seeks out this place as a refuge, as a place where she's going to find her tribe. She gets an invitation and she takes a fucking elevator. All right. So she, her journey is very, very different than Sunny's. But I was so glad that we got female beta readers, and I was so glad that.
And shout out to them; they're great.
Yes, to give me their blessing and to say that I hadn't done anything atrocious.
It was really great, and I haven't been part of a beta reader experience like that, because like I said, there was we of course we wanted to make sure the story flows and everything, but with the specific goal in mind, and we threw it out there. We're like, be honest, like, let us know. And they were so great with their notes that they sent back. I was surprised at the amount of notes we got back, because, and the amount of things they're saying, I really love this character.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people that, all the beta readers, she became like one of their favorite characters.
Well, that was the goal.
You connected. Yeah, it's great.
This hideous, almost throwaway character from the first one, and make you love her. And I hope, and yeah, a lot of people say that is the experience. A lot of people say that, she's so awful, but you root for her by the end. Because, yeah, she is awful, especially in the beginning. And she knows it. She pretty much apologizes at the end. She's like, yeah, sorry for coming off as such a bitch in the beginning. I don't think she actually calls herself a bitch. But, she acknowledges that she came off as very abrasive and confrontational at the beginning of her saga, and she feels like she's turned a corner by the end.
Yeah. What's really fun about Septum, too, is that you did decide, and I'm not going to make this any sort of direct sequel. This is, Paraquel?
Yeah. We didn't even know that word existed until, again, our mutual friend, Preston Faffel, told us that this existed. Yeah, a Paraquel. It's not a sequel or a prequel. It's a story that takes place simultaneously to another story. So the time frames overlap, but they only intersect extremely briefly. So briefly that Deeper Than Hell and Septum are absolutely standalones. At the same time, those who read both will have a much bigger understanding of the world building I've done, and the other potential avenues for exploration should the series continue. Wink, wink.
What was your main motivation for kind of going that direction?
Like I said, some people were shocked, and I even had this one friend who said, that kind of crossed the line for me. And, it also really, for me, that's what separated your book from being a good book, to being something that isn't good. That one character who pops up for that one paragraph, that just tipped the scales in the negative direction for me. I'm sorry. That's what she said. So then it was kind of a challenge, okay, well, let me go back and, justify that. And once I started, it was great. And, it was so intimidating to write from the female perspective. But, everything I had written until now, basically, until my novelization actually, has been first person, as a journalist and even as a creative writer before I was a journalist. I've been really attracted to first person storytelling because that's the authority. I was really intimidated about the idea of writing third person and being this omniscient narrator and deciding how much to reveal and things like that. It was really scary for me. So, I wanted it to be first person, but then I really had to embody this character, Sybil. But it was crazy. I hope that's what we were talking about.
I think so. Yeah. I think it is. Like our conversations we'll go in and out of stuff. And like I said, like this ramble. It's all conversational, man. That's what it's all about. Like this is like literally when you and I are just chatting, this is how it goes.
Hell yeah.
Except I'm not like interviewing you about
right.
We'll just go on and on and on. So great. So you have the Deeper Than Hell books, Deeper Than Hell, and then Septum. something that people can kind of dive in and really be taken for a ride. Quite literally with both books. I love the journey aspect of it. I love the character, and that's the thing. I think you really do grow to like these characters. But I mean, they're all massively flawed. I mean, we're all flawed, but these are like extra. This is like next level. But you
Yeah,
still
I think they're
connect
the
with them
kind
in
of
certain
people.
ways.
They're the kind of people who, in other stories, would be the ones that you would instantly feel have a negative response for. They're the kind of characters
Yeah.
who, if they showed up in your average person's life or story, they would definitely be seen as someone kind of out there or weird or not normal.
Yeah, like you and me, we're not normal.
More or less.
I want to talk really quick about Dreadful Years, really quick. But then we gotta. I'm looking at the time, man. We make time fly. What is going on? And then we'll talk about Forbidden Zone.
Sure.
So Dreadful Years, encapsulates your time at DreadCentral, and a huge thank you to the fine folks over at DreadCentral for, because we had, make sure we had permission, to use stuff that you'd written for the site, in a book, and they were, very gracious with that. So, we stuck that little logo on there, so now it's all official. But I really like this idea, and while a lot of publishers would be like, I don't know, if there's an audience for that. I mean, we as a publisher are like, well, I kind of like that idea. Like, I mean, I think that writers, especially ones who covered things such as you did, should be able to put their work somewhere where it won't get deleted. I've seen so many people, a website goes down and all of their writing, maybe they didn't have it backed up, or their hard drive would crash or something. And all these things that they've written that they're proud of are gone.
Yeah, save your stuff. Just because it's on DreadCentral or Bloody Disgusting or AV Club, save your stuff, because eventually they're all going to go the way of the dinosaur, and people are going to stop paying to host dead sites, and it's impermanent. So when I worked at DreadCentral, it was during a time where we had a really small staff, going through some transitions, and then the pandemic on top of that, and the uncertainty of it all.
Right.
So, I ended up doing a lot of the interviews myself, or if I had a bigger staff, or we had more money to source out the interviews and things like that. But I had so many great interviews, and I just wanted to get them all together in one collection. I'm really grateful to EncycloPocalypse for allowing that. It's something I can be proud of. It's something I don't have to worry about ever disappearing, no matter what happens to DreadCentral or the internet or the electrical grid. You know what I'm saying? It's great to have it out. Dreadful Years is a wonderful takeaway of my time at DreadCentral, and I do throughout try to give a little context in terms of what was going on at the site, what was going on with me personally. And I think the way it kind of, what it does really well is it encapsulates the year and a half right before the pandemic and the year and a half right after the pandemic. It was just a really weird time in horror. It was a transitional time between decades, and I got it in the form of interviews with some of the most respected and most talented people in the horror making film space. So it's great to have it as a testament to the work I put in there, the wonderful people who gave me their time for an interview, that now it exists, somewhere off the internet. And it was great. You're muted.
A second. There we go. I love how you do, introduce people to you. You give context to your time at DreadCentral, and then like you said, throughout the book, the little glimpses into the day of the interview, what was going on, is really fun. So So if you're someone who loves interviews and stuff like that, reviews, interviews, things like that, I think this is something that you'd get a lot out of. And there's so much. I had to index the damn thing. Hell, but you indexed it, and then I had to figure out how the hell am I going to do an index? So that was one of my many learning things. I'd never done an index before, and I was like, oh shit, we got to do an index.
Well, that's part of what makes Dreadful Years so great too, is that it does have an index. You can check out the index, see who's in there, and go and read something about that person. Because even if I didn't do an interview with that person, you're getting another actor or filmmaker's take on that person. So
it's an extensive.
Oh, Zelda Rubinstein is mentioned in here. What's up with that? Let's look it up on the page. Oh yeah, Behind the Mask. Rise of Leslie Vernon. Oh, cool. I remember that movie. So, it's a fun thing to just sit down with and pop around.
Yeah. Super fun. Speaking of super fun, man, we're gonna go over an hour. Hope everyone's comfy. Grab a drink, everybody, because we need to spend some time and one of the first things you spoke to me about when we brought you on board as an author, and I had known that you had spent some time with Richard Elfman. And you had told me, like, all I want is to write a novelization of Forbidden Zone, Richard Elfman's insane cult classic. It's funny. I feel like the last handful of years has really kind of ramped up in the cult status even more.
Totally.
And,
it's just too bad that
why would you?
It's too bad that he couldn't get the rights to sign off on them. Psych. Beautiful.
You have one right side up this time.
Yes. Yeah, I made a little video and I ended up holding the book upside down, but I had already done like 12 takes and I was getting sweaty. So I was like, fuck it. Otherwise, it's the best one.
That's it.
But yeah, Richard Elfman,
why I
became friends with.
Why write
Go on.
We have a little bit of a delay, but no, why? My question, and you explain this. Why write a novelization of a movie that, to me, when you mentioned it, I was like, I don't know if that's novelizationable.
That was kind of part of the reason.
How do you novelize a thing like that?
That was the challenge, How do you novelize something that's, first of all, a musical, surrealist, something where the performances were largely improvised, where the sets were handmade, where so much of it comes from the aesthetic. I knew I wanted to do it, but at the same time, it was a bit of an intimidating endeavor. But finally, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. It was kind of like you had to get into the mind space for it. I made a joke on that upside down video I made that I don't even know how it happened, that I just smoked some interdimensional, 6-dimensional cannabis and emerged from a fog, and it was already published and I didn't realize anything had happened. But that's not far from the truth. Look, I pretended that it was real and I really leaned into the horror, and I thought it would be funny to look at it all and describe it basically literally, but also present it in a way where it's like, oh, well, this is just a normal, crazy story. It was challenging. Right. And, the reviews have been really, really positive in general. You've got people who love the movie saying it was a perfect novelization. And then you've got people who loved the movie saying the movie's great. What you've done is tedious. Well, yeah, I mean, the movie's 82 minutes. You can't really compare. And like you said, it is almost like the whole effort was just a creative experimental exercise. Because how do you something like Forbidden Zone?
You did it. You somehow did it. How when did you first see Forbidden Zone? What we need the impetus of your love for Richard Elfman's work and Forbidden Zone especially. Do you remember the exact time that you first saw it?
I mean, it was on some sort of bootlegged VHS tape at college, in some some guy's dorm room, smoking a bong, and for a while I wasn't even sure I had really seen it. I was a huge Oingo Boingo fan. So,
Right.
someone was like, oh, have you ever seen, you're an Oingo Boingo fan? Have you ever seen the movie? Pulls out this bootleg. And like I said, 10 years later, looking back on it, I'm like, is that even real? In 2004, it finally got re-released on DVD. And like you said, Richard's cachet kind of went through the roof. He puts up a website and he gets hits from people all over the world saying, I love Forbidden Zone. And I'm so glad that it's now out there. He thought the film was lost. He thought,
Right.
he had lost control of it creatively, physically, financially. He thought it had come and gone and it was just lost. But it came back. The whole thing had a second life.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
when did you and Richard cross paths? Because you'd posted on your social media. You've toying with the idea of doing some sort of biography, but you've been collecting, just conversations,
Sure have been.
things like that. When did you and Richard cross paths? Because that's just a random thing. Because I see you like, oh, I'm at Richard's house. I'm like, what?
Right. We crossed paths. I think it was 2018. Dread Central, 3 or 4 Dread Central writers were all in Los Angeles at the same time. I think we were covering what is it? The E3. We're covering the E3.
Okay.
And Richard had a relationship with Dread Central's editor-in-chief at the time, Jonathan Barkan. Richard had published a editorial on Dread Central. Now that Forbidden Zone was back in the public consciousness, there were some things about it that he felt should be addressed, about a film that was created in a different age, that was paying tribute to artists from much different eras. So, anyway, Richard knew that a bunch of Dread Central authors were going to be in town. Okay, this is how cool he is. So Richard's like, okay, a bunch of Dread Central authors are in town. I'm going to invite them all to dinner at my house. Now, Richard is a gourmet chef, so he's going to invite us over to dinner at his house. His beautiful wife, Anastasia, is going to serve us drinks. He's going to cook us a great meal because he's a wonderful guy. Oh, by the way, he's also going to invite about a dozen famous horror movie directors to all sit around and have like a wonderful evening of horror with Don Mancini, Darren Lynn Bozen, Brian Yesna, Jackson Stewart. I'm sure I'm forgetting someone, but it was just an unbelievable party because Richard Elfman knows how to throw a goddamn party.
He
So
does.
we just stayed friends. We stayed friends, and throughout the years, I've been lucky enough to be invited back on multiple occasions, as you know.
Yep. He's great. When he wanted to pitch us his new book that's coming out this month, the 21st of November, The Schlemazel of Sabrium. It's by the way, it's so great. I mean, it's a vampire novel like you've never experienced. It's he plays with so many tropes and he brings in this Jewish perspective as well, and at the time. So, but yeah, when we were talking about he's pitching ideas, you and Mark come on over, and Josh, you came over that night too, right?
Yeah,
and
we had a great meeting of the minds. It was wonderful.
Oh my God, the best wild boar I've ever had. He's cooking it over literally right over the coals. He's such a gracious host.
A wonderful man.
And I had to step up my barbecue game. I was like, I got home and I was like, man, I really need to learn how to do this stuff because Richard's kicking my ass. No, there's no way. There's no way.
He's got these like little electrodes. He's got these little electrodes that he like puts in the meat, and like it's attached to an app on his phone to tell him the temperature at the core of the meat, because he gets it to within like 3 degrees of like being safe for human consumption before it gets too cooked and you lose some of the wonderful flavor. He takes it to a whole scientific level, but it's also, like I used the word before, primitive. He's going to take this thing and he's going to throw it on the fire. He's going to throw it in the fireplace right on top of a hunk of wood, and it's going to be the best thing you ever tasted.
Oh my God. So I'm going to, so Richard's going to be on in a couple of weeks. I'm going to try to get him on the week that Schlemazel is out, and it may turn into just the barbecue cast, because there's just it's such, when he talks about it, because that's all I wanted to talk to him about. It's just like, where did you learn this? Where did you study this? And he'll tell you.
Right.
The man is a man of many talents.
Many. And you said before,
yeah.
I am collecting Richard's stories. About 18 months ago, he granted me permission to kind of be his biographer. And we sat down for, basically weekly meetings, in I think it was early 2021. And, over 10 hours of recorded footage that I now have transcribed and I'm going through. Plus, I've done interviews with a lot of people associated with him. It's going to make a wonderful story. And you're going to see that Richard Elfman is something amazing. He was amazing before Forbidden Zone, before Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. The story of his upbringing is fantastic. He's done crazy stuff since Forbidden Zone that people don't know about. He was a food and wine critic. He was a journalist for 10 years. At the most mundane, he was involved in real estate. But let me tell you, when you're Richard Elfman, nothing you do is mundane. So I'm going to tell you some stories about some experiences in real estate, in flipping properties that are going to blow people's minds. But I'm blessed.
Amazing.
It's an authorized biography, meaning he is my source, and I'm putting together something. And he's got great things going on right now. People are like, when's it going to be released? Right now, Richard is still living some of the chapters that need to be included in this biography. When it comes out, it's going to be unlike anything, and it's going to show the life of a truly extraordinary art rebel.
I can't wait to talk to him about his book and everything, but that's great. I mean, I thought it is because you were kind of the key that connected us, with Richard, and it's just been a blast. It's just fun how all this is connected, with what we do.
It was an absolute pleasure. When I was meeting with Richard weekly, I mentioned to him, I'm starting to talk to these guys at EncycloPocalypse. And then, I kind of vetted you on his behalf. He had a novella, and it was great. It was great because he's legit and you guys are legit. I wouldn't have just haphazardly, connected y'all. But, he is just a wonderful person. Everything he creates it has his unique flavor. If you've seen his other films, Shrunken Heads, Modern Vampires, and especially Alien Clowns and Geeks, how nuts he is. And his film Bloody Bridget is tearing up the film festival circuit, winning awards left and right. Look for that to come out sometime, I'm sure in 2024. And I think that's going to be another huge chapter in the ongoing saga that is Richard Elfman.
We're doing a signing with you and Richard on it's Thanksgiving weekend,
November 25th.
Yes, and he keeps trying to tell Del from Dark Delicacies, there's gonna be a 10-minute musical performance. Just make sure you put it on there. And I know that. Well, it's not Del in the emails. It's his wife. His name escapes me at the moment, but and I shouldn't. But it's for some reason just
Sue.
Not popping in my head. Sue, yeah. So
you should know.
I know that's
Richard. Richard did a signing there when Alien Clowns and Geeks was released, along with a re-release of Forbidden Zone, that being the director's cut of Forbidden Zone. And he did do a little 10-minute number ahead of time. And it included burlesque and blood. And Stu and Del were very accommodating. So I can only imagine it's going to be awesome. Someone might even get their heart ripped out.
No, I probably. Well, that's going to be a fun time. That's going to be a fun time. Hanging out and watching you guys sign books. This could be great.
Yeah.
But I love that, Forbidden Zone, and then moving on into Richard Elfman's debut book. It's just, I love that these, can connect, and we can continue to bring, Richard Elfman stories out to everybody in this format, in book form. It's absolutely fantastic. Well, we're running out of time. We're gonna start wrapping up.
Sure.
But we do have things to talk about. We've mentioned it before. There's things you're working on that you can't
Yes.
necessarily talk about yet. We've briefly mentioned, Billy Pond's
Yeah, we can
Circus
talk
of the
about
Dead.
that.
We have
I'd like to
mentioned it. We're not,
let
I
let
can't. It's hard for me to keep secrets, but
let's
let's
let
talk
people
about that
know.
because that's
Yeah,
on deck for you to
that
write.
is on deck. My next novelization is another cult film, not as old as Forbidden Zone. This is a 21st century cult film. Circus of the Dead made a huge impact in the Texas horror community that birthed it. Billy Pond is a extreme horror director on the level of Rob Zombie, Eli Roth, Toby Hooper. He is just a nuts gonzo grindhouse director. And Circus of the Dead has the same kind of cult following that the new Terrifier movies have. Circus of the Dead came out first, and it's always remained a little underground. But if you like MFers like Art the Clown, just clowns who don't give an F and who are going to do things that are beyond anything you ever imagined, you're going to want to meet Art the Clown in all of his glory in the novelization of Billy Pond's Circus of the Dead.
That's gonna be a fun one, and Billy's been so great. I'm so glad that we're able to kind of help, bring that out. And he's the biggest thing, one of the biggest things I love about doing this is when you get a comment from a filmmaker, like Billy, even Vincenzo Natali. They have these stories, and that these are their stories, like these are their babies, and we're able to kind of bring them new audience through literature, through fiction, through in book form. And but also, like, as a publisher, we're very respectful of, like, this is their story, and what's the best way we can tell it, and just giving them the space to create, to be involved. We're working with J.R. Bookwalter now on a couple novelizations of his films, and some filmmakers are more, they'll kind of wait off to the side and just let it be done. But I love giving directors and screenwriters and even and authors their chance to tell a story, to be involved, because it just, at the end of the day, it just it's just more satisfying when it's out there that we have done the best we could to preserve the story. And there's some surprises in J.R. Bookwalter's novelizations. The author modernized Robot Ninja, so there's a
Nice.
whole spin on, you have some commentary on social media and the comic book industry. And I'm still waiting for JR's notes back, because I'm hoping he liked that.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're able to give creators this space, and like with Circus of the Dead, Billy's been so grateful that it just makes, it warms our black little hearts that we're
It's
doing
going to be
something
a
fun.
wonderful project. Billy's going to supply me with the screenplay, but also the screenplay actually included a lot of internal dialogue that didn't make it
Yeah.
into the film. So it really will be a new experience. It will be a level of the film that Billy built in that just remained invisible and unknown, and we're going to be able to use that to further intensify the story that already exists. And I think this book will be wonderful for people who have seen the film, and I think even people who haven't seen the film are going to read this and go, this story is just nuts. I mean, it's going to read like something just as effed up as something you'd read from, any of the current extreme authors out there. I don't want to name names.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for hanging out and talking to us about all your books. I think we covered them all. We got them all in. There'll be links in the notes under here. You can follow us, of course, on social media. The easiest way to find us, everybody, buyhorrorbooks.com. All the social media is there. Our store is there too. And you can find us. You'll be able to find the podcast version of this, the YouTube version of this, all that. Josh, where can people find you online? Where are you hanging out these days?
Yeah, I guess the easiest way would be Twitter at Josh_Millican, Millican. Talk to you there.
Awesome. All right, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Mark, Alan Miller, and I are going to be hanging out, talking about kind of giving a history of Encyclopocalypse. And then if things work out, we'll be the following week. Richard Elfman will be joining us to talk about his novel. So I'm extremely excited to talk to him. We're just going to talk about barbecue. That's all that's going to happen.
Nothing wrong with that.